will be joining us, Aviva Gunzburg, is Associate Senior Lighting Designer for NDYLIGHT. And as you know, COVID has drawn the world's attention to our medical systems. And we are applauding our workers and scrutinising the safety and care of vulnerable people residing in aged care facilities and in hospitals. But this talk is not about research findings or any specific health-giving luminaire range. Rather, the presentation divulges anecdotal information regarding the application of the researchers' work. And I can see her logging in. You'll have to unmute yourself, Aviva, I believe. Or I might be able to do that.
Sorry, good morning.
There we go. I'll hand it over to you.
Okay,
Tell us.
I just need to share my screen. Good morning, everybody. And welcome to this space, lighting design for healthcare. I'm going to start by acknowledging the traditional owners on this land we are meeting today. For me, that is the Kulin Alliance and the Wurundjeri elders, past, present, and emerging. Okay, so a little bit about me and my history in healthcare. Probably started with Royal Children's Hospital. I was responsible for the external spaces and I helped aid in the design of the client area. It was so long ago that we were playing with metal halide and fluorescent technologies. And so the architect was bringing a lot of daylight into the space and we were trying to battle with dimming and color or luminaire technologies which had deficiencies in color rendering. So you went from a system where we had daylight and incandescent light, and you could tell when a person was going blue from oxygen depreciation, also known as cyanosis. And when we were designing it, they had to rely on machines because the lighting technology didn't allow that. Then again, then my second large foray into healthcare was Bendigo Hospital. When we were designing Bendigo Hospital, people had started talking about circadian rhythms and there's a big client appetite for it, but the luminaires weren't quite there, and the ability to dim all your luminaires at the same time and have a consistent color shift was not available. What we decided to do was if we made the color of the ceiling change, that would work because daylight changes the walls and the colors of your surfaces in a room. But we tested it out and we had warm uplight and cool down lights at one point, and the space felt absolutely awful. One thing that is known is you should have a consistent color temperature throughout a space. So at that time, it was decided circadian rhythm wasn't yet available for that hospital. By the time I got to Origin Energy, sorry, not Origin Energy, Origin, that's how good marketing is, I tell you. Origin Youth Health, LED technology is the go-to lighting technology. And as a mental health space, our imperative was to design a peaceful, non-institutional environment. Now, whoops, forgive me. This room, oh, and I've already told you about the two anecdotes. So this room reminded me of those anecdotes whereby, oh, hold on, I've only told you one with Bendigo Hospital. The other anecdote I had was, this is the Royal Children's Hospital is the image, and you can see there is an uplight component. For the Royal Children's Hospital, our main lighting idea was to provide indirect lighting to the patient rooms, which is really, really good, and it worked really effectively. except for a couple of rooms. There was massive ductwork, and our ceiling height or our throw of 500 mil had dropped down to 50 millimeters. And so we had to use a more traditional broad beam downlight in those areas because we just could not indirectly light the space. Okay, sorry, bear with me. Previously, I have read from a lovely script I had written, and now I'm running it on the fly. So it's not quite as consistent, but I don't sound like I'm reading off a script. So this space is a really cool space. This is in Bendigo Hospital in the basement levels. It leads into an MRI space. All the patients who come into this space are pretty stressed. So we wanted to do something to help relax them. So we worked with the builders and the architect, testing materials, testing transparency, testing light colors, so that we could get an image or an essence of bushland. It's a regional Victorian hospital. Bushland is what most of the people grew up with around there. You will note that we still needed to provide hospital level lighting, which is quite bright. So we moved the light over to the far side. It is common for us to put light onto the side of a corridor. So when you're wheeling patients through and they're facing up, looking at the ceiling, they're not looking directly into a light source. But here it also helped make certain that the backlighting effect wasn't washed out. Okay, lighting ergonomics. My background is as a industrial designer. That's what I trained in. And as part of that, we needed to consider how user-friendly our products were. And it's an idea that crosses very nicely into lighting design. We are designing for people, but instead of the people using products, they're using a space. It underpins good lighting design principles, i.e. providing suitable illumination and brightness to a space whilst minimizing glare. As far as healthcare is concerned, it's a very complex space. So let's start by considering an office environment. Okay, there are generally three main tasks. You know, you're either working or you're having meetings or you're sitting and eating lunch. Most of the people are of a similar age, you know, somewhere between 18 and 65 tends to be the working age group. So their eyes generally have similar performance requirements. Given this, it's fairly easy to light an office and not have people suffer from eye fatigue or headaches because of the lighting. Now let us consider an aged care. Now aged care, we have two very different work groups. One are the residents who might be sitting, maybe knitting, maybe watching TV or reading a book. And then you've got the staff who are helping the residents with their needs. Now the staff have administration or pharmacy, dispensing medicines or cooking. So when you look at an aged care, you might be providing a base level of lighting that allows a wide range of work to happen and overlay that on that task lamps and lighting control to dim lights up and down, potentially change the color, because the older you get, the easier it is to see with cooler lighting temperatures due to degeneration in the eye. And then we consider the chaos of a hospital. Okay, so age range is, you know, newborn to very elderly. You know, there's people are full health, visitors meeting people, to people are critically ill in an ICU. Sometimes there are patients trying to sleep, but the nurses need to take their vital signs. And then you have people lying or sitting or standing. And of course, you've got your hidden services such as your pathology, radiology, your kitchen and cleaning. It is a seemingly impossible task if we consider the people as a whole. Yet there are ways that this can be achieved. Now, there's a large array of lighting options for a hospital. Now, the first one we go to is daylight. Daylight has good, daylight helps us and is effective in aiding our biological systems and our psychological systems. So bring in daylight. It's usually the architect who does this, and it's usually prioritized for the patient rooms because it naturally provides circadian rhythm lighting. Of course, electric light is needed because daylight isn't available 24/7, whereas hospitals are open at 24/7. Now, once upon a time, lighting was all incandescent or halogen, and there was never a concern about color temperature. These light sources produced a spectrum of light that mimicked the sun. Then came fluorescent and metal halide technology, which brought about energy efficiency at the expense of color rendering ability. We then became more reliant on machines because our eyes couldn't detect changes in color. LED lighting is continually improving its ability to mimic the sun, and TM30, which is the ability to light 99 different colors, those results are improving. It is advisable in a healthcare environment to use luminaires which most closely match sunlight. So if you see CRI 80 on an LED luminaire, I would suggest in a healthcare environment, it's not good enough. Okay, let's roll on to color change. Oh, sorry, that was the full color spectrum, which we had just spoken about. I missed the turn button. Okay, color changing. This falls into two categories. There is theatrical lighting and changeable white light. Light art can serve as a distraction. It can be used for sensory calming and can provide a sense of control when you can interact with it. Color change white light refers to the ability to change the color of the light from warm white to cool white. It can be used to set an atmosphere. Some people prefer cool white light, others warm white light. Sometimes it depends how close you live to the equator, which color temperature you prefer. You can even set the light to change over time, allowing people to notice the change in time or the passage of time in hours when there's no access to daylight. And that has psychological benefits. Now, people often mistake color changing white light with circadian entrainment lighting. And Dave was speaking about this. Circadian entrainment lighting is a quantity of melanopic lux received over a specific period of time. It's not simply light changing color. Now, as Dave said, it's more efficient, cooler white light to get the melanopic lights than warm light, but you can do it either way. Okay, now with all of this lighting, you need an effective lighting control system. So with regards to daylight, you need brownout and blackout blinds. With regards to patients in a bedroom, give them control at the bed so that they can turn lights on and off with a nurse override. With circadian entrainment lighting, you need a fully programmable system. And then with medical inspection lighting, because by its nature, it's very bright and glary, have it switched and not switched on for long times, only as required. Okay. question, when we budget the lighting for healthcare, it's a very, very tight budget. And the hierarchy of light is distributed through the space. Daylight primarily is given to patients as a priority. These leaves, you know, a lot of staff without access to daylight except on their breaks. That leaves the question to ask, are we sacrificing the health of the health workers to ensure the best possible recovery outcome for the patients? And if we are, what can we do as lighting designers to help the health of the healthcare workers? Now, this is where we turn to circadian entrainment lighting. Lots of people in hospitals are shift workers, which means you can set up circadian shifts if there aren't shifts overlapping. So the concept is for the first 4 hours of a shift, you set them up so they get a high level of melanopic lux. So their circadian rhythm works around the shift rather than around daylight or sunlight. And it's been known that if you can shift the circadian rhythm, it improves alertness. So there are less accidents, there are less mistakes which can affect a patient. So if it's possible to run a system that way, it is valuable. The next possibility is adding color shift into these spaces. So whilst they don't have access to daylight, they can still see their color of their room changing, and they're not just looking at a clock to tell what the time is. There is an effect, and warm color makes us feel more relaxed. It's used in restaurants. So, and whiter color helps us feel bright and alert. It's early morning light. So you, along with the circadian rhythm, giving them melanopic lux, you also give them the psychological input of the passage of time through a day. Okay, this, however, cannot be used everywhere. I was speaking with my dentist. His nurse would love to have color changing light in their space. It doesn't have any daylight at all. The dentist went, no, it all has to be static. I look for color changes, and the color of the light can't change because then I cannot accurately diagnose what I'm looking at. Now, if we return to circadian entrainment lighting, there have been a few small studies done on dementia patients and people in the ICU, which show really good outcomes. For these, though, they were done with lamps, and I recommend the idea of using lamps because circadian entrainment lighting is a lot of light, and it can be quite energy consumptive, especially if you're lighting up from 2.7 meters or 1.5 meters from the eye versus about 600 mil from the eye. Now, one thing I have not shared with yet is how to use light to manage stress levels in healthcare. Healthcare tends to be a space where stress is fairly normal. Now, we can create cozy areas where we reduce the light level a bit, warm it up. We make certain that our areas don't have downlight, so people aren't sitting under cones of light. They have broad, diffuse pools of light, because sitting under cone of light can really make you feel as though you're on show and make you very stressed. And the other thing to avoid are deep shadows or blurred shadows, anything where you can't see clearly and you might have poor eyesight and may not be able to walk, or you might see things in shadowy corners. And lastly, you need to give people control of their space. And in finishing, I would like to say that I believe there shouldn't be a lighting design split between the lighting engineer and the lighting designer. The staff have equal importance to the patients, and the design to their areas should support their health in the same way the patient rooms support positive health outcomes. There is a long journey to take to convince those that build hospitals that the value of the lighting designer extends beyond pretty lights, but hopefully we will get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Aviva. Excellent presentation. And I was lucky to see some of those slides the other day when we had a bit of a run through. Excellent overview and some of the projects there that you've worked on, the new Bendigo Hospital, the Origin Youth Mental Health Centre, and the Royal Children's Hospital. You're passionate about your job, and that came through in your presentation. Thank you very much for being here today with us, Aviva. Thank you.